All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but we kicked off the event in the chat and we have a question going for all of you. What did you want to be when you were a child? So I'm seeing baseball player from Chris Castillo, Domingo Maronta. I see love of art and wanted to be an architect. Alex Sanchez wanted to be a choreographer. Let's see, what else? What else? All right, I see astronaut, teacher, and chef from Abigail. Alejandro, professional soccer playing astronaut. That's amazing. Karen, you wanted to be a singer like Selena. Yes. Daniel, movie director. Awesome. All right. Steven, a photographer. Brittany Rodriguez, a federal judge. More power to you. All right. Sandra, you wanted to be a teacher, but not anymore. Well, there's a lot of opportunities to still teach no matter what role you do. All right. Arlette wanted to be a pastry chef, but wow, so many things. And I'm kind of curious to see where everybody's careers are going to go, especially hopefully after this session. All right, so it is 12:30, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you once again, everyone, for being here. My name is Pia Zaragoza, and I'm the moderator for today's session on getting hired into tech. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. And in doing land acknowledgements, I'm on Ohlone land. I'm also the Vice President of Accessibility Research at JP Morgan Chase. And now it'd be great, Elaine, if you could also tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get started.
Yes, definitely. I'm so happy to see all the answers we have here. And it's so lovely to be with you here, Pia, today. I'm Elaine Montilla. I am the founder of 5X Minority. It's a company that is dedicated to raise awareness regarding diversity and inclusion and promote the need for women and minorities in tech. I am also the Assistant Vice President and CIO for the Graduate Center at the University of New York here in New York City. And I am excited to have all this conversation moving forward and share some of my insights with you.
Well, thank you, Elaine, for that. So just to kind of go over our agenda for a 45-minute session today, we're going to do some introductions, which we already just did, but we'll go a little bit more in depth. And then we're going to jump into a fireside chat with Elaine. And then we're going to have 10 minutes for question and answer. Please keep an eye on the chat because I'm going to definitely be posting different things and also keeping an eye out for questions. There's also a way to ask questions through video, which I'll explain later once we get to Q&A. But I'm going to go ahead and post this next prompt into the chat. And we're going to work our way into this topic. And it's something that is near and dear to my heart, but how to get over these barriers. And so when you get a chance, if we could start transitioning to answering, what are some barriers you have come across in getting into tech, if any? So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So Elaine, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Interesting. That's why I had so much fun watching and reading some of the answers. I wanted to be a flight attendant. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to discover the world. And I thought being a flight attendant was the best way for me to do that. And I've been lucky that I do get to travel before COVID, of course. But flight attendant was my dream job for years.
It's never too late. You do amazing things. And, with that in mind, how did you first learn about technology and the different career opportunities that exist?
Yes, I want to tell you a little bit about myself before we jump into that. I was actually born and raised in the Dominican Republic, and I moved into the US when I finished high school at the age of 17. And so I did not speak a word of English. And when I started going to college, I went to a community college and I had to do the work study program. And so I was assigned to work in the computer lab. And I think half my passion started there, working at the computer lab, helping other students with their issues, putting paper and toner in the printer. And then the other half came from watching my oldest brother, who loved gaming and technology and is a web designer and project manager. And so watching him inspire me to just be curious and see what else is possible, what else is out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much out there, and curious about, you know, to some of, you know, kind of going into the question in the chat, what were some of the barriers to entry that you faced, if any, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so the first one, the language, definitely, because I did not speak English. But once I got started to working in tech, my biggest barrier, I'm gonna say, was my accent. I had and I know a lot of people will probably relate to this. I had a very strong accent, and it made people look at me differently. And I felt that I'm an empath person. And I would feel that people would look at me differently and always look at my lips to make sure they understood the words that I was saying. So definitely the accent. And then afterwards, believe it or not, I was very shy. I was extremely shy, and I did not want to talk to a lot of people or get too much attention. So what helped me get over that? A few things. One of them, and something that I highly recommend, is therapy. Because I got promoted a few times, in my opinion, a little too fast, I suffer from imposter syndrome, which I know a lot of people get, especially women. And so I didn't believe that I had what it took to do the job. And I would always ask myself, oh my God, these people are gonna find out one day that I don't know what I'm doing. So through therapy, it helped me question my thoughts in a way. And I learned to watch my thoughts and not believe everything. You know, we all have that voice in the head that tells you, who do you think you are? How dare you become a supervisor and then a manager? So I think that was one of the reasons. And then the second one is I went on a spiritual journey where I learned how to meditate. And now it's part of my everyday practice. I meditate twice a day and I journal. Not every day, but as often as I can. And putting my thoughts into paper helps me clear my mind. And I think those were the three things that really helped me moving forward, which doesn't mean it goes away 100%. I think imposter syndrome sometimes comes back, and you just need to know and be aware of it and say, oh, okay, you're here. I see. It's okay. I got this.
Elaine, I'm so glad you shared more about therapy. You know, it's really interesting. I remember Sheryl Sandberg once said, you don't need a doctor, you need a therapist.
Yeah.
And mental health is so important.
And there is so much stigma around it. And I think we all need to, learn to be more vulnerable. I think other people are not going to learn from us unless we show that we could be ourselves. And there is no shame in having therapy. I think everyone should have a therapist.
I agree. And I totally agree with you. You know, you also mentioned imposter syndrome. And in case the audience doesn't know about this, Elaine has an amazing website, which I'll let you share more about. And you started talking about your company, but then I was also on it last night, just reading all the different articles. And one of them was about confidence. And so it'd be great if you could share a little bit more about your company and that article that you wrote on confidence.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So I because I started journaling, I discovered my love for writing, which was not there growing up. And so now I have my own blog, but I also write for other companies. And imposter syndrome, it's a little voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough. It tells you you're not ready for this. This is a mistake. And it comes and goes, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. And so I wrote an article to share my experience, and also to share that it is okay to talk about that we are all perfectly imperfect humans. And I think that there is a lot of, having to face or trying to demonstrate something that we're not. And I think in the world, especially now, we have all seen how that doesn't help anyone and it doesn't take you anywhere. I keep going back to being vulnerable because once I discover the benefits of it, even with my teams, I go to a staff meeting, and if I made a mistake, I tell everyone, guys, I messed that up. I made a mistake. And we want to make sure that as leaders, we demonstrate that. And I think a lot of us, when we started in tech, we were afraid of being ourselves, and we were afraid of making mistakes because we also felt that either we're going to get fired or imposter syndrome will come and it would confirm that you're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah, and Elaine, I'm so glad that you mentioned that notion of psychological safety and authenticity. It's interesting because when I think about JP Morgan Chase, it's a company that I've been there the longest, and it's one of those places where I've truly felt that I could be my authentic self and actually make mistakes and learn from them and have that space. And so that's something that I can't even begin to tell you has been a thing. One of the interesting things that Louise started to bring up is this notion of fitting into the workplace culture, which means a non-diverse, male-dominated workplace culture. And, that brings up a lot of questions, especially being a researcher. But I want to kind of delve into that and more broadly, what factors, if any, contributed to your professional growth throughout your career? And when we're thinking about those barriers, it'd be great if you could also just like speak to some of them and how you kind of overcame them to be where you are today.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Several factors. I'm gonna say that the first one would be the mentors that I was lucky to find, because I know that not everyone is lucky to have a mentor in their lives, and I had many. I had different ones, and sponsors. And so first, I want to say you don't have to have just one mentor. You can have 3 or 4. So don't limit yourself. I had a mentor in college while I was taking my computer networking class, who was a female Colombian, and that was the first time where I told myself, wow, she speaks like me, she has an accent like me, she's a female like me, so if she could do it, then I can do it too. So that was the first moment where I realized that, yeah, I can do this, I know I could do this. And then in the workplace, I had an amazing mentor and sponsor who would always see things in me that I couldn't see myself. And please say in the chat if you can relate to that. Because growing up in my culture, and especially as women, sometimes barriers are created, and sometimes we create them ourselves, and sometimes our parents create them, and it's not their fault because that's all they know. And so sometimes it's hard for us to dream big because we don't see other people who have made it. So I think my mentors definitely helped me. And the second one is that I consider myself a student for life. I know I don't know it all. I always go into a meeting with a curious mind. So if one thing I could tell you about this is be curious. Never stop being curious. I always hire people smarter than me. I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not the smartest person in the room. And if I am, I'm leaving the room because that's not my room. I want to be learning. And so I write a lot because I read a lot. I have probably 7 podcasts that I listen to on my phone and different books that I read. So wanting to learn and having mentors helped me. And my spiritual journeys is the other part where I try to practice mindfulness and I try to be present as much as I can.
Yeah, one of the things, and thanks for sharing that. And, one of the things that I'm also curious about is especially like thinking about the industry more in general, especially when it comes to women and minorities. And just kind of like curious about your reflections on just the current state of the industry as it relates to minorities and women and getting into tech.
Yeah, so I think you read, and I read a lot, and there's a lot of articles where you read, things are improving, things are much better. But if you look at the numbers, it goes from like 5% to 7%. What I could tell you is that I believe companies are talking about diversity and inclusion a lot. They're writing about diversity and inclusion a lot, but I don't think there is action. We're not taking enough action. And one of the biggest barriers are unconscious bias. And a lot of us, and I say us because I have it too, we all have it. A lot of us don't know that we have it. And just to give you a quick example, because this happened today, I was walking my dog and my beautiful neighbor came up and out of the conversation, we said, we should connect on LinkedIn. and I'll talk more about LinkedIn later. And she was looking up my name, and I don't blame her because, like I said, unconscious bias, sometimes we don't even know we have it. And she found my name and she said, well, I see people here, but you're not a TED speaker. And I looked at her and I was like, actually, yes, I'm a TEDx speaker. But it goes to tell you that in her mind, she wasn't saying it because she wanted to put me down or anything. She really thought that someone who's a Latina with curly hair and an accent could not possibly be a TEDx speaker. And we go through that in the workplace. We go through that with the hiring process. I don't know how much information you want me to give you, but I have a lot. So let me know when you want to cut to the next one. So the hiring process is another issue that I'm sure people here are well aware of. We have an issue with unconscious bias when people are reading your resume. We have an issue if the names are not removed. You could tell that I'm a female and a male with the same qualifications normally are rated differently, and the male is usually rated higher. The job descriptions are very long, and it has become a wish list. I don't know if you've seen a job description recently, but it's 2 and 3 pages long, and I know I don't have those qualifications. So we've made it into a wish list instead of putting exactly what we need. And another issue with that is that when women look at a job description, if they don't have near 100% of the qualifications, they won't apply. But men apply even if they just have 60% of the qualifications. So it's keeping women out of the workplace. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
I can talk about this for hours.
I'm glad you brought this up because there's a lot that kind of came up in the chat, especially about the interview and just trying to get that first interview. So and the second and the third, and just finding your place.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit more about the interview process. Something that I've noticed, and I know it's affecting a lot of people who are here in this room right now, is that because of this unconscious bias, when you go on an interview, the people interviewing you tend to feel comfortable with people that look like them. And so the process is not always fair because not everyone is asked the same questions. And that's why we have to make sure that everyone gets asked the same questions, because once you start to feel comfortable with someone, you deviate from the questions in the interview and you tend to rate them higher. And so that's why I talk so much, because I'm hoping that that issue is resolved in my lifetime.
Yeah, and with that in mind, especially because we're talking about issues to be resolved in your lifetime, curious about your thoughts, especially when it comes to diversity, inclusion, belonging, and what more can be done. What can we do to solve it?
Yeah, so a few things that I know we can do today, and some companies have started to hire a diversity and inclusion officer, which is helpful. But we need to tie our goals to compensation in some way. So the first thing I would say is we should make unconscious bias training mandatory, and we should have it every year. I see companies that would have the training session and then they don't have it again for a long time. And so this is an issue that you need to be reminded of. And so I will recommend that we have this training every year. We should have blind auditions. We should remove the names from the resumes. And some people would argue that it's more than the name. Sometimes the address or the year that you graduated from school, for example, can affect some candidates. We should definitely not forget about employees after they get hired, because a lot of companies want to have like a check mark. Oh yeah, I have a Latina in the team and I have a Black person in the team. The work starts after they get hired. Let's pair them with someone senior for some time so that they can learn. Let's have mentorship opportunities. Let's make sure they have the training that they need. And let's make sure we allow them to be themselves afterwards, which is another reason why women in tech leave after 10 years, because of the lack of support and mentorship.
Elaine, as always, you have such a powerful voice, and that's something that I really admire about you. Do you have any thoughts for people? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now? Sorry. Do you any thoughts on how people can find their voice? Because I feel like, especially a lot of times with the interview process, it's also about sharing your story, and in sharing your story, a lot of it is finding your voice. So curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, the one thing that I learned the hard way is that one, you have to make fear your BFF. I actually have a workshop titled that. You have to make fear your BFF. Fear is your friend, and we've grown in a culture that teaches you that fear is the end, right? To me, fear is the beginning, because fear is usually telling me that I care a lot about something. Before I came here today, I had butterflies, and that was telling me how excited I was to speak with you, Pia, and with everyone. So I would say, make fear your best friend and learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think a lot of, especially Latinos in tech, don't advance because they are so afraid of the uncomfortable conversations. We are so afraid of speaking up because we don't know what will happen. If I was not uncomfortable a few times, I would not be a CIO today. You have to allow this feeling, and it takes practice. So it's not going to happen overnight. You have to allow these feelings to come in, and you have to let them be inside of you. And what happens is that we push them. Oh my God, no, I don't want to be afraid. Oh no. So it takes practice. It also takes reading the room. When you enter a room, something that I always do is learn how to read the room, because you want to know when to say what you want to say, right? You want to know when is the right time to say what you want to say. I'm not someone who would come here and tell you, you got this, you have to do it. No, you have to know when to do it. You gotta be critical about that. And so networking is another way that helped me just learn how to reach out outside of your initial circle and connect with more people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And in fact, I feel so lucky that I was able to advance in my career at JP Morgan Chase. I started off as a senior researcher, and now I'm vice president. And I feel like a lot of that is, to your point, is just speaking up and not being afraid. And I'm just glad that I had that space, and that JP Morgan Chase really carves that out. And I feel like one of the things that I appreciate, especially at JP Morgan Chase, is our employee resource groups. I'm not sure if you have something similar at your institution, but for instance, at JP Morgan Chase, we have Adelante, which is our Latinx group. We have accessibility, which is something I'm really passionate about, people with disabilities, and we all get together. And then we have Pride, which is our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees and allies. And then we have the Black organization leadership development and women on the move, and so much more. And I feel like this is also, especially for me, has been a space where I've been able to, have casual conversations, find mentors, but also like talk about, the different problems that exist, and really kind of find other like-minded individuals and really kind of make a dent on them. And I feel like what's really cool about employee resource groups is that there's the organicness. So I'm curious if that's something that you've seen where you're at.
Not where I am right now, and I have my own opinions about ERG groups, and we don't go into that today. But I think that if you feel supported, and if you have a voice, and if there is room for growth, then I'm all for it. Then I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Fair. On that note, I kind of wanted to kind of transition into this next part. I know we're getting close to question and answer, the Q&A portion. So I just want to kind of throw this out there. So I'm going to put this in the chat. So if you want to ask a question, feel free to post in the chat. You can also ask to share your video by simply tapping on the Ask to Share audio and video button. We're going to try to get to as many people as possible, but otherwise, share social media and you can reach out directly. So with that said, let's go ahead and start ramping up the questions for that. But let's talk about resources for a second. And I'm also going to post this to the chat. Elaine, curious about resources you feel that are helpful to this audience on getting into
Yes,
tech.
well, definitely the Techqueria Slack group. I'm there every day, and you can find anything you need there. I belong to many different groups, so definitely check that out. So Slack groups will be one. Meetups is another one that I use. I would say be careful with meetups because sometimes they become overwhelming. Um, for women, there is this website called Girl Boss. If you haven't checked it out, go take a look. They have different subgroups. So there is a Latina group, there is a technologist group, entrepreneur group. I have connected with a lot of people there. Facebook groups, I belong to maybe 6 or 7 of them, most of them women in tech, but you will be amazed at the collaborations that come from these groups. And last but not least, because I think it's one of the most important ones, is LinkedIn. A few years ago, LinkedIn was nothing and you would not get anything done there. But today, if you don't have this now, I highly recommend that you create a template where you have a message that you use to send to people that you look up to. And so always be on the lookout for people who are already doing what you want to do. Do some research because people love to hear that you know about them, and create a template where you say, hey, I want to reach out. I saw you at this event, or I read about this article that you wrote. I'm in New York. I'm here to support you. If you need anything, let me know. I highly recommend that. Be active on LinkedIn. People are always looking there, and they also have groups. I haven't used the groups so much, but they also have groups within LinkedIn that you can connect with.
All right. And so another question for you. What advice would you give to folks who are trying to make the transition into tech or looking to get their first tech job?
Yes, that's a very good question. I know that certifications don't really show that you know the content, but because I'm on the other side, I could tell you that sometimes a lot of people won't get a job unless you have the certification. So look around and see what you're attracted to. Which one do you like? I started when I worked in IT, I was doing desktop support. So I got my A+ certification. I got my Network Plus certification. Then I got my PMP certification just because. I'm a nerd like that. So I would recommend certifications because sometimes when job descriptions are created and we have a grid, certifications gives you a point, just so you know. And if you don't have any, then you don't go to the next level. So just think about that. And then the second one is I always had a document where I kept all my achievements. And I recommend that everyone, if you don't do that today, start doing it. It helps you with your annual review with your boss. It helps you when you go on a job interview. When you finish a project, when you complete anything, write it somewhere. Put the month and the date, and you can copy and paste everything from there into your annual review because you already have it. And I think, oh my God, that helped me get promoted many times. So try it and send me a message. Let me know how it goes. Or if you need help, just let me know.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start including some folks who are in the queue to ask questions live. So Omar, get ready. Okay, hopefully that worked. Uh-oh. Omar, are you still there?
Here. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Hi.
Oh, there you go.
Cool.
There you go.
So something that well, first of all, thank you for speaking with us. You've touched on so many things that resonate, and one of them was this idea of unconscious bias. For the work that I do, bias is an especially important thing to combat because it has implications in the design. And I'm wondering if you had any good ways or techniques to kind of help us recognize when we're starting to fall into a pattern of bias or assumption making, and how we can kind of turn that around.
Yes. Excellent question, Omar. Thank you for coming in today. So one of my favorite books, it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the habits is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And if you attend the training, they give you what's called a talking stick that you hold while you're speaking. and then the other person will hold it when they speak. So what I would say is, make sure you try to understand where other people are coming from before you start making assumptions. Because what we do now, especially when we are scared, while other people are talking, we're trying to come up with what we are going to say at the same time that they're talking. And so I think authenticity comes into that too. It is a process of knowing who you are and what your values are. And if you know that, then you would always want to know what the other person is thinking first, and if you could help in any way, even if there is a disagreement, because we don't have to always agree. But question your thoughts, don't believe everything you think. I have that sign at my door. It says, don't believe everything you think. Just question your thoughts. And if you're not sure, ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. I think sometimes we don't ask questions and then make assumptions, and then we get in trouble because we made assumptions that could have been clarified in 2 seconds.
Thank you so much, Omar. We're going to go ahead and switch to Lucio Bueno. Get ready.
I love this. This is so much fun.
All right. So hopefully you're not having any technical difficulties.
No, I think it takes a minute. Yes, if you didn't read that book, I highly recommend it, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They're not paying me, I swear. But it's so good. And you continue to remember the lessons. I mean, I read this book maybe 10 years ago, and I'm still talking about it today.
All right. So we're going to give this another minute. And then unfortunately, do me a favor, Lucio, if you're not able to jump on video, feel free to ask your question on the chat. Otherwise, we can always come back to you. All right. So, Leobardo, all right, get ready. I'm going to go ahead and add you, and hopefully you can ask your question.
What's your favorite book, Pia?
All right. Oh, my goodness. I think for me, it's something you kind of touched upon earlier subject, but it's how to have difficult conversations. And to be honest, I have such a good stack of them at home, just because I feel like, oftentimes, unfortunately, what makes you successful is diplomacy. And so I read up a lot on that. All right. So, all right.
Something that I talk a lot about when I speak with women is that, you, especially women, you want to be assertive, but you don't want to be aggressive. So make sure that when you walk into a room, yes, of course, sit at the table. Ladies, don't sit on the side, sit at the table. And ask questions, but make sure your tone doesn't need to change. There is no need, nothing gets resolved when you're angry. I'll say that. And you have so many ways of saying what you need to say without being angry. Anger doesn't fix anything. So be assertive, but not aggressive. That goes a long way.
By the way, thank you, Charlie, for posting that 30+ books that you've read. I can't wait to check that out. I just want to call that out in the chat. All right. Sorry, we're going to go ahead and move on to Carolyn. So Carolyn, get ready.
If not, we can just read the questions from the chat.
Yeah. Like I said, if for some reason it doesn't work out, feel free to ask your question in the chat. Otherwise I could tell you all about my
I see a question here from Jamie. He says, how do you read the room in virtual meetings? I think that's a good one. Because of COVID, we are all in virtual rooms. And because I'm an empath, I feel people when they're in front of me. It works less on video, but I want to acknowledge that it is way more difficult to do that on video. But if you do have video on, then looking at the face and the facial expressions, there's a lot of information about this, just so you know, on YouTube, will tell you. Hey, Matthew.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, okay. Thank
you.
So my questions, I have it written down, so I'm just gonna read it off. So what would be your advice for someone who finds LinkedIn to be detrimental to mental health at times? And how necessary is it as a tool for job searching, because to be completely transparent, I see it sometimes as ultra competitive environment, which can cause me to have some anxiety. So I try to balance sometimes just keeping my head down and focusing on myself, not looking at other people, comparing myself to other people. Because sometimes I can get, a little disappointed or something, but at the same time, it helps to get motivated. So what would be your recommendation for someone dealing with that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. That's a very good question, and you actually said it while you were asking the question. I don't think the issue is LinkedIn per se. I think it's the fact that you are comparing yourself to other people, and I think we do that a lot. One of the reasons I recommend meditation in my spiritual practice is because I learned that I have everything I need already inside of me. I was born with it. I came to this world with it. And I only was able to learn that through meditation. You could say that 100 times and it's not gonna go in my brain, but through meditation and sitting still, I was able to feel it, right? So and the one thing that I would say is that your mental health is always first. So if Slack is too much, if LinkedIn is too much, you don't have to do that. It is only a tool, and there are many tools, but only Matthew knows what Matthew can do. And so I would say there are many influencers out there, and you can listen to what everyone is saying, but you don't have to act on it. And that includes me. I don't get overwhelmed with it because I already know what I'm doing, right? So when I go into LinkedIn, I go for 3 things, I did it, and I come out. The problem is when you stay there and you look at other people and then you start saying, oh my God, they did so much. Oh my gosh, she did a TED Talk. I can't believe I'm such a loser. I didn't do one. So I think the problem is that and not the actual platform, which yes, sometimes it could be too much. So make sure you protect your energy, make sure you take care of yourself, and maybe a therapist, I don't know, but try to find ways to understand how valuable you are and how much you already have without the need to be competing with other people. I want to be better than Elaine last Friday, and that's my only goal. I am not better than Pia, and I'm not better than Matthew, and there is only one Matthew Antonio Estima. There is no other one. So no one else can offer what you offer. And you got to remember that, and you have to tell yourself these things every week because it's really hard to remember sometimes.
That's great. That's a good response. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Samir, you asked a really great question. I am a graduate student looking to transition into the tech industry from higher education. What sort of advice could you give to someone like me that wants to stand out in the internship application process? And what sort of experience should I look for that will make me stand out as a qualified candidate?
I wish I could read it so I can go back. Okay, what would make you stand out? Well, being yourself will make you stand out. But going back to what I said earlier, make sure that you are writing down all of your accomplishments and all the work that you've done and how you have contributed to the team and how you have contributed to a project. If you keep that in mind and the contributions you've made, then that will come up. And just be yourself. I think, I feel pain sometimes when I hear people are trying so much to be someone else or to compare themselves to other people. I cannot be anyone else. And when I go into an interview, this is what you get. This is it. It's me. I don't want to be 2 different Elaines. So when I walk into my workplace, I'm the same Elaine that I'm at home. I'm not trying to, and some of that comes from people pleasing. That's why I keep going back to mental health, because a lot of the issues that I hear, it's here. It's in your mind. So don't believe everything you think. I'm going to say that again. Make sure you're writing down your accomplishments and just be yourself. I belong to the LGBTQ community, if you didn't know. And I always say, if I go to an interview and I sense or I could see that you don't really want me, or the questions that you're asking me make me question myself, then I don't want to be there. I want to be where I'm wanted. I don't want to be a check mark, right? I want to be an addition.
Yeah, and in addition to that, transferable skills. Really take note of everything that you've accomplished and really think about how that applies to the role that you're applying for. All right, so for our last video question, we have Sandra,
Oh, this is fast.
hopefully.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sandra.
So I'm from Colombia. I just arrived to Canada and I have a strong accent. I'm hoping to start interviewing, and I was wondering how can I take away that bias that might happen when they listen to me, see that I'm not native English speaker. How can I make the interviewers like look more into my skills and my capacities rather than the bias that they might have because of my accent?
Mm-hmm. Good question, Sandra. Thank you. Bienvenida. The first thing that I would say is that you can control what other people think. Get that out of your head. You can control what other people think. You can only control what you do and how you react to what other people do, right? So I would focus on myself. I would practice a lot. So I recommend that you Google, interview questions and then practice out loud. And then just be yourself and give it your all, because you're not, no matter what you do, you cannot change the bias that exists in other people. You will be wasting your time and energy if you're trying to do that. So since you only control what you do, practice, practice, practice. Have somebody practice with you. Have someone ask you questions. Do it like if you were in an interview, get dressed and speak up. Something that I do at home, and I do this for years now, is that I say things out loud. A lot of women tell me, how are you so comfortable with your voice? Because I hear myself all the time. So if I go into a meeting, I speak at home. I get ready in the morning, and if I have a speech, I say it while I'm talking. I had to say many times, I'm sorry, I'm not done, because I was interrupted in meetings. And I had to say it to myself a few times at home so that I had the courage to say it when I was at a meeting, because women get interrupted a lot. And after saying it a few times at home, I would go to work and say, I'm sorry, John, I'm not finished. You can continue when I'm done. And that's what gives you the power to be yourself and to be heard. But you need to hear yourself first, and you need to practice, because it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It didn't come naturally to me.
Very much.
Gracias.
All right, so we're gonna start. Oh, Sandra. Well, hello. All right, so we're gonna start wrapping up, and I just want to give a big shout out to JP Morgan Chase for being a sponsor, and I just want to let you all know that we do have a booth, and we are hiring. So, please visit our virtual booth. And I just also want to put it out there, we're also there to give advice. We're also there to nerd out on tech. So any questions that you have, feel free to also bring it there. And the other thing I also kind of just want to talk about, especially because there are some questions about what it's like working at JP Morgan Chase, is I just want to let you know that there are 50,000 technologists at JP Morgan Chase out of 220,000 employees. And I think that the coolest part about that is this notion of, one of the things that Elaine started to kind of talk about is, like, especially as an industry, what are we doing? And we have this focus, of course, on diversity inclusion. We just hired Brian Lamb, and he's amazing. I recommend y'all check him out on LinkedIn. But we definitely have an agenda to advance diversity and inclusion with a focus on attracting, developing, including, and retaining talent. And I think of course, of different backgrounds and races, but especially of abilities. And that's something that I'm passionate about. But then it also goes to gender and sexual orientation. And we definitely have a strong commitment towards that. So another thing to kind of also, if you have any questions on that, definitely come to our booth and ask about what's that all about. But then I think something that we didn't really get to kind of talk about is, well, what happens if you don't have the degree, or what if you can't afford to get whatever training, books, don't forget about the library. But also take a look at, especially like at JP Morgan Chase, we have classes that, you can take, especially for instance, if you're an engineer, you could take like a Java class. And then, if you pass successfully, it opens up opportunities, for instance, at JP Morgan Chase. And I know several other companies have that. So just want to put it out there. There are a lot of great free resources, especially if cost is ever a barrier. And especially for my folks, just in case anybody out there who has a disability, just know that you can ask for accommodations and don't forget to ask. At JP Morgan Chase, we have the Office of Disability Inclusion, and that's something that, people, it's kind of like, it's something that is normal. It's something that, these resources are there, so use them. And really have your recruiter as a partner and help you learn more about what's out there, what you can ask for, so forth and so on throughout the interview process. And also, for instance, we have Autism at Work. And so that's just one of the many different programs out there that we have to support people of all abilities, especially at JP Morgan Chase. And then lastly, I just also want to say thank you to Elaine. You practice what you preach, and your authenticity shown throughout this whole conversation. So thank you so much. I know we have 1 minute left, and I want to give you that last minute, Elaine.
Thank you, Pia. I want to thank you. You did an amazing job today, and we also got to learn a little bit about you. And I also want to thank everyone that came in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I am always available. A lot of people say that, but they're not, and I am. You can send me a note. And we also share some information about my website and my company in the chat so that you can see it. Your questions show me that I'm in the right path, and I want to be able to be a voice and kind of have a ladder so that other women and other minorities can come up with me, and that's my mission. That's what I'm trying to do here. So thank you for joining us.